there, guys. So today I'm going to take you through the basis of stroke, which is probably the most basic and thing that you want to learn of all the foundations of drawing. Um, so what we're going to do is take you through the simple anatomy of what's actually forming each stroke and what your strokes need to be. So I want to break down and get away from a lot of the um, imprecise ideas around stroke, like, oh, use your shoulder and don't chicken scratch and things like that, and get us away from that into something where we're very clear on what good stroke is and how to develop it so that it works for you in the way that you want it to. Okay, so the first thing to understand about stroke is that most people, when they're using, when you're writing, you're using your fingers. So if you're doing A, B, C, D, this is using your fingers. And your fingers are good, but they only have a stroke length of about this long, about this long, about this, about this. So it's very good, and you probably do have very good finger control. So you can use that for refinement stages of drawing, and that can be quite helpful. Now, when it comes to using your wrist, this can be a sort of um, mid-range stroke, like just this kind of short stroke length. So this can be okay for like making a box or something, right? So it's about this length of line. So that's your wrist. So you don't want to be using your fingers and your wrist to draw longer lines than that. And these are also going to be they're going to have their properties. So this looks very compact. So for example, if you're doing every single thing that you're doing with your fingers, that's not going to look very good. That's what chicken scratching is. Then with this one, where you're using your wrist, if you're using your wrist for everything, uh, your drawings are probably going to be pretty small, and so it's not going to help for accuracy, just because drawing something very small is more difficult than drawing something larger because you can't scale down, scale up, that sort of thing. And then there is kind of what I call the printer method of drawing, which is where someone knows how to use their fingers, knows how to use their wrist, but then they just arbitrarily try and move their arm around with it. And you'll get these wobbles that will come into your drawing. So say someone will draw a face and they'll draw a face and it will be like this because essentially they're not using the right muscle structures. So essentially, on your muscle structures, let's just say you've got your deltoid that comes over here. You got your pecs sort of on the other side, obviously. And you've got like your traps and the levator scapularis and stuff like that lifts the scapula up. So you've got these muscles. But the thing is, this big delt muscle can only really control the arm once it's up in the air. It cannot control it in between this part. Instead, what's controlling that is the supraspinatus muscle. So the supraspinatus muscle is the muscle that helps you pick up like little handbags, like shopping bags and that sort of stuff. That first part of the lift that's a little bit weak is the supraspinatus muscle, but it also rotates your arm over. So if you were to lift up your elbow and twist it over, uh, this is a supraspinatus type movement, and this is something that you're going to use. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Supraspinatus movement. This is me being left-handed, by the way. If I do it right-handed, supraspinatus, whoop, whoop, whoop. I don't use my right hand, but you can see how consistent it is just because I'm accessing that muscle. So, and then infraspinatus is this muscle here is your infraspinatus muscle, and essentially it goes. I mean, that was that way. This is it. It basically winds back up this way. So you have your supraspinatus, which does this, and your infraspinatus, which does this, which is rotating your arm out. So for example, if you were to give someone a thumbs up from like they're behind you and you give them a thumbs up as you're leaving, this is your infraspinatus muscle. And this is super useful because this stroke length is actually a really good stroke length. So as you can see, you've got like this smaller stroke length, you've got this wrist stroke length, and you've got this much larger stroke length here with your muscles. If you're going for longer, you don't really have longer stroke lengths in your arsenal. You do have like your lat muscle, which you can use for longer stroke lengths, but it's not the greatest. I mean, you can do like a sort of drop stroke. Ugh, sorry, I gotta brace my hand just a second. Yeah, there we go. That's more of a drop stroke. Okay, so, and there's a third muscle here called the teres minor muscle. This one is always going to bring you sort of laterally across like this. So it's useful for creating horizontal lines or just altering the angle of these ones. If you lift your, I should talk in order. Okay, so we've gone through that. So we've got these main three muscle groups here that we want to be using for stroke. We can use our wrist, we can use our fingers, but they're probably going to be used for a different part in the method rather than our sketching. We've also got the subscapularis here, which is underneath this here, which is also useful to know, but probably a bit difficult to explain. So the subscapularis, it kind of brings your shoulder a little bit closer to yourself. So if you like to squeeze yourself when you're cold and you're shivering, that's your subscapularis muscle contracting. And essentially what that does is it adds stability. So this is kind of like the opposite antagonist muscle to your pectoral muscle. And it is essentially giving stability to the shoulder blade, so that say if the pec muscle contracts, that the subscapularis muscle can also lock it in, make it tight. So your subscapularis muscle is also going to be used, like if you're doing bench presses or something like that, the subscapularis muscle is going to brace. So a lot of people, they might push up on their bench press, whatever, and do all that, but if they're not controlling on the way down on the bench press, they're not improving their subscapularis muscle. And if your subscapularis muscle is weak, then you're going to have a very unsteady time in your bench press. So for example, so the subscapularis muscle is actually quite important, whether that be for strength or stability, but it's also important in drawing for creating a very stable motion. So sometimes you will actually contract the subscapularis muscle, because it will just allow you to get tighter. But the thing is, when you contract it, you'll be limiting your range, and that you might get like these stop points because everything will be a little bit more locked up. So when you're trying to control your stroke, you have a problem of which muscle are you using, when, why, what antagonist muscles are sort of contracting at the same time. I know this sounds complicated, but I'll make it simple by the end, don't worry. So these are your main muscles that you're going to be using. You also may be using the subscapularis muscle. We can see the supraspinatus here. See where this connects onto the shoulder? This helps it lift a little bit. This first 5 degrees of motion or whatever. It lifts up this way. But it also helps rotate this way, which is actually this way. So where this is coming from the back and this is going to the front. Okay, so the subscapularis muscle, this one can be used to kind of pull your shoulder in tight, and maybe like if you're really scared, you can kind of be using this to help you refine, but it's not going to give you very fluid strokes if this is contracted. You're going to be getting much like you're going to only have one range of motion before you might come up against a kink. And those kinks are total killers when you're drawing with stroke. If you're trying to get like an idea up and you're trying to do this or you're trying to do that and you say this and you say that. If you're doing all this kind of stroke work, you don't want kinks, so you want your subscapularis nice and relaxed. And one of the you also want your deltoids nice and relaxed. So one of the big problems that people have when they're doing strokes is they think that you can control 100% of your movements and your strokes, which, while it's true for your fingers and it's kind of true for your wrists, it's not true for your shoulder girdle. So as I said, with the subscapularis, you're going to get these kinks. If it's contracted, it will help stabilize everything, but it's also going to give you those kinks. So you keep it nice and relaxed, and if you're using these guys, you're not going to have control over 100% of your motions. You're going to have control over this, which is supraspinatus, infraspinatus contraction. Then if I rotate my elbow, like just lift my elbow up to its maximum point, like you just lift your shoulder up, then you'll see that this is the infraspinatus motion. This is the supraspinatus motion. And so these are your most natural ones. I'll do it right-handed as well. So I've got with my elbow down, sort of down here, up here, and then as I lift my elbow up, I got up here and down here. I don't use those. Like, don't use my right hand. But you can see, just by using the muscle properly, you're going to get the line, you're going to get the consistency, you're going to get the length. That's just because of the nature of the contraction, okay? And with the teres minor muscle, this is where you put your elbow nice and in, nice and tight to your rib cage. This will get you a crossways like this. So you can do a kind of infraspinatus, supraspinatus. Okay, and you can do that with the right hand, where put the elbow in nice and tight, and then supraspinatus, infraspinatus. Okay, so those are going to be your major muscle group contractions that you're going to use for stroke. So just those simple three muscles. So elbow in to your rib cage, which is your teres minor muscle contracted, which is going to be horizontal. You have it in resting position, which is going to be this sort of diagonal or this diagonal for right-handers. Yeah, that one. So this 45-degree angle for right-handers. This one for left-handers. And then you're going to get, once your elbow position is up, you're going to be getting these positions. So this sort of 45-degree and this 45-degree. It's not really 45 degrees. It's a little bit steeper than that. But that's what you're going to be getting. So you're going to eventually get this kind of star pattern. And you can alter it and change it a little bit. Like about this range. And this 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 and this, and you'll see that you'll get like this sort of star pattern that my infraspinatus and supraspinatus can create before I lift up my elbow, and then then I've got this pattern, and I've got like this sort of pattern. So you can create nice, long, steady strokes, but only within this kind of like star pattern. So you can see there's these blind spots. This blind spot is covered by your teres minor contraction, bump, bump. So you can just do that to cover your lateral moves. With this one up here, you can rotate your elbow over as much as possible, and you can get further down if you want. Like you can almost lean over the tablet or whatever you're drawing to kind of get like this section. Or you can also rotate and twist your shoulders. So if you rotate and twist your shoulders around so that your drawing arm is more forward, you can also get this line. So this section here. All right, and it's the same for this one. You can get this one and this one by rotating your shoulders. So if you rotate your drawing arm forward, bump, 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 you can get that one, and you can get these ones. Okay, so essentially, you've got a few different positions. This one is with essentially shoulder line. It's your shoulder line that affects these, that allows you to get these zones. When it comes to this one here, this one is going to be your teres minor muscle to allow you to get this spot. Maybe I should like change this so there's like a color coordination, right? So this is going to be your teres minor muscle. Your supraspinatus and infraspinatus muscles are going to be just naturally. Actually, I should change that one so that this is just a little bit different, because this one's going to be your elbow is raised, while the blue one is where it's just in relaxed position. So essentially, you have 4 different things that you can do that are pretty good. You've got like little different things you can do as well, but essentially what you can do is shoulder line, whoop, why did I spell that wrong? Okay, and then you've got teres minor, Okay, so this is up, left, down. This one is back this way. This is for lefties, sorry. And then for righties, you have it this way, up, down, and this one is for teres minor. Then you have your diagonal directions this way and this way for relaxed, the relaxed position, or this way and this way for righties. Then you have the other positions, which is this way and this way when your elbow is up, elbow up. And it's same opposite for righties. So essentially, you want to practice just those strokes and essentially getting them so that you're comfortable with them. So move your shoulder line, like tilting the drawing shoulder forwards more to get up and to get down. So you can go up, down, up, down, up, down, right? So that's with your shoulder forward. And then you want to contract this teres minor muscle, which means that your elbow should be at the very, should be touching your ribs. Boom, across, 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 right? Should be very consistent, should be about this length of line. Then you want to do something with relaxed. So if you're left-handed, that's going to be up this way, down this way, up this way, down this way, up this way, down this way. You can also sort of rotate a bit, like just splay it a bit so that you can kind of see the range that you have. If you're right-handed, obviously you're going to be doing it the opposite way. So you're going to be going here and here and here and here and here and here. And, you know, just kind of getting used to the stroke. Like I don't even use my right hand, but you can see I can do stroke okay because I'm contracting the right muscles. Then with your elbow up, do your diagonals like this. And if you practice that, you're going to have all your straight strokes, at least so far as your shoulders are concerned, which will help you draw from the shoulder. I mean, you don't need to practice with your fingers because you're already practiced with your fingers. You might want to do some things with your wrists. They'll be about this size though. They won't be very big, but they'll be about that size. You can use your wrist to do that if you want. But then you're going to have things like using your scapular type muscles to create curves that are bigger. So a bit like this. And if you create like nice sort of big semicircles around this way, around that way, this is learning to use those shoulder muscles to create those curves. You can also kind of contract a bit, and you can also use a bit of wrist along with these shoulder muscles. So for example, you might have a wrist that's curving. A wrist might curve while you're just dropping with like say you're doing a line like this or something like that, and then you're just adding a little bit of wrist into that. And you can create this sort of bend because every bend is going to be a combination of a straight and a curve. It can either be a curve from your wrist, or it can be a curve from it can be a curve from your shoulder. Does that make sense? So that's just breaking it down for you so that, and you can, whether you're left-handed or right-handed, you can do curves on both sides. It's not a problem. So often what you'll see, like when I talk about creating, say, something like a form, like a circular form or whatever, I will talk about how, like, I'll think about this aspect of the line and then I'll also think about this aspect of the line. I won't just think about like, oh, it's just a circle, because this does have invisible transitions between different muscle groups, and that's why you're going to get like these little wobbles. So you're going to get these changes just because the transition isn't going to be completely smooth between the different muscle groups, and that's what's causing those sort of wobbles to happen. Okay, so what's the other thing that I need to explain? Okay, yeah, that's basically it. So if you're going to do an exercise like, oh, I'm gonna do some points to a dot, just keep in mind that this can all be the same muscle group like that, and then lift your elbow up, use your same muscle group like that, use a muscle group here like this. You'll start to feel when it gets restricted, and then, you know, use your muscle group coming across like this. And yeah, then shoulder tilt so that you can get those lines doing this. Does that make any sense? Also, whether you want a small curve, it's going to be your wrist. If you want a large curve, that's going to be your shoulder. So if you're going to do a small curve at the start of something as you're dropping through, boom, that's a wrist. But if you're doing a large curve as you're dropping through, this is going to be your shoulder. So some things, like on a face, for example, they're going to be a specific type of curve that you're going to remember from muscle memory, that, you know, like a cheekbone is a wrist curve, which then transitions into you pulling with the shoulder. So it's a little wrist curve pulling with the shoulder. So things that are more subforms are often going to be a little bit more wrist-like in what you're doing, but then things that are a little bit longer, like the jawline, this is going to be a kind of supraspinated, infraspinatus kind of curve, which is often why you'll see diagonal. You won't often see someone doing a jawline that is linear, like this, or whatever, or like this. You may see that, and you can do that, but it's just probably going to be less of a comfortable position for the artist to do that, because it's not a relaxed position of the arm. You've got to do a little bit of shoulder tilt. Does that make sense? So, and you can do these drawings. You just want to understand ahead of time, okay, this is a shoulder tilt. And then when you look ahead of yourself, like a good exercise that you want to kind of try to do is like a racetrack. Now, I'm not talking about like set up a racetrack like this and this and this, and oh, now you go down and you go up and you go down and you up, or whatever. You can do that. That's cool. But if you are doing a racetrack, what I'm just talking about, let's just create something random like this, I don't know, and this, and go, like, try and go through there. All right, so what you want to do is you want to think ahead. So let's say this one you have to circle around as part of the track. So here, 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 wow, wow, here, 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 through here. This is just because when you are drawing, what you'll be doing is you'll be looking ahead. You won't be looking at the line that you're doing, like right now. You have to look at the next line as to where you're going to go and what you're going to do. Because if you're looking at the next line, looking ahead, just like driving, that's going to make it so that you start to memorize which muscle contractions are going to happen in what sequence. And that's going to help you dance and coordinate your motions. So, oh, it's here and here and here and here. So oftentimes people will be like wondering, like you might look at me draw, and then you'll be like, well, how are you knowing what's going on in the drawing? It just looks chaotic and random. And then I'll be like, because I'm reading ahead. So there's some lag in my pen stroke, like from the digital sort of tablet. There's some lag. There's a little bit of lag, and there's lag between my mind being able to see something and then registering it. So what I'll just do is I'll just be like, oh, okay, so that's this curve from muscle memory. I'll be like, it's that curve, and then there's this curve from muscle memory, and this curve from muscle memory, and then I'll do like this curve from muscle memory, and this one, and this one, and then this one, and then we'll go through here. So I'll just be thinking like 1, 2, 3, 4 steps ahead or something in my curves. Like this one's going to curve, and then it's going to counterclockwise curve, and then it's going to go up and down and up and down and up, and then we're going to curve and curve. So for example, if I might draw an eye, I'll look at the eye and I say, that's got like an underneath curve and then an up curve and then like a stroking across. So I'm just going to go down, stroke, and across. I'll be like, down, stroke, and across. And then that will allow me to do the kind of curve that I want. Does that make sense? So by planning in little beats ahead of yourself, like on this racetrack, you can then start to learn to coordinate each motion along with whether you need to shoulder tilt so that you can go up and down, or you need, which you can just simply, you can do that mid-motion if you want. Like you could be going supraspinatus and then shoulder tilt, and you get this sort of drop as soon as you're doing that. So supraspinatus, shoulder tilt, or you could go supraspinatus, teres minor. So you're going, and that's just a transition between which muscle I use. So it was supraspinatus, and then it went into teres minor. And this is what I mean by stroke. It is complex, as say a tennis stroke or golf swing or anything like that. But what you'll find is there's a lot of bad information out there on how stroke works. They'll just say, don't chicken scratch. Okay, well, what's that? This is just using your fingers. Don't use your fingers. Okay? Don't use your fingers. It's okay to have double lines and stuff, like, or even swirly mess lines. These are okay. These are fine. Don't worry about those, especially when you have these. Sometimes what that means is then you're thinking with your muscles, and that's really good. You want to be thinking with your muscles. That's great, because then you can just muscle memorize different curves and different things, and then you can say like, oh, but this and this. And if you're loose, yeah, you're going to be doing things in like a range. There's going to be like this, what is it, like a 15-degree angle shift because of how loose you are, but you're never going to be less accurate than this. And the reason is because if you're using the right muscle, then it doesn't matter if it's got like a left tilt or a right tilt to it. It's just going to be relatively in the same sort of muscle group section, if that makes sense. So your accuracy isn't going to be that far off if you're just using the right muscle group to do it. Like that and that. Oh, this is far off from this, is it? Because then you just transition that up a bit, and now you've got your ball. Does that make sense? So this isn't hard when you understand the muscles and the strokes that you're using. And using muscles is good. Okay? Don't use your fingers. You can use your fingers in refinement. When you're doing refinement stuff, like you're zooming in super far, and then you're kind of like you're just getting like the perfect sort of little engraving on something. Definitely use your fingers. They're super well trained, they're super accurate, they're super good. Everyone can use that. It's perfect. Your wrist for small work that you just want like a more straight line on. Like, oh, I want it to kind of be a little bit more straight, a little bit more rigid. Wrists are good for that. But they're never going to be very big, and they're not going to be flowy. They're not going to be connecting lines that like transition into different stuff. They can be part of a sequence though. Like say you're drawing smoke, like this and like this, and I don't know, and like this and this and this and this and whatever. So you're drawing this kind of like smoky, turbulent, whatever that's sort of happening. I don't know, like there's a cigar here or something. I don't know. That's it's all smoky. So you've got these kind of lots of changes and sweeps and turbulence. Well, then you're going to be using your wrist in concert with whips and controls of these muscles as well. So you're going to be combining wrist action with shoulder action. So some people will say, don't draw with your wrist, draw with your shoulder. You also want to be combining wrists in there at some point as well, because they're going to help you do two things at once. And some curves won't be possible without using a bit of wrist action, just sort of supplemented with a bit of shoulder action. And you can kind of almost suggest things with your wrist sometimes. So you can suggest with your wrist, and then you can just kind of take it longer with your shoulders. So you can be like, but with my wrist, I go like this, and it kind of locks you in, and then you go, ha, 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 with your shoulders. So stroke is a thing all of itself, and I hopefully have taught you a little bit here about stroke and how it works. Not to get afraid of like, oh, don't do this and don't do that, and use your shoulder when you're drawing. But what is using your shoulder? No one tells you what using your shoulder is. It's using your shoulder blade. You don't use your delts. You don't use your trap muscles. You don't use that. So what then is your shoulder? Shoulder bone? No, it's your rotator cuff muscles. And you're basically just using supraspinatus, infraspinatus, and teres minor generally, and you're using a shoulder tilt as well, so that you can change that tilt just a little bit so that you bring your drawing arm forward and then you're good. Or if I'm drawing right-handed, which I'll do now, you bring your right forward, whoop, and if you're doing supraspinatus, infraspinatus sort of things, teres minor things, which is touching my rib cage, infraspinatus, supraspinatus, sort of nice and relaxed, bop, 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 and then if I put my elbow up, oh, I just hit my own computer tower. Smooth this. Elbow is up. You want it in the maximum up position, because if it's in the maximum up position, the shoulder girdle won't be loose. And because if the shoulder girdle is loose, you might think, oh, I can hit these in between points by just having like a loose shoulder girdle. But if you do that, it's always going to be like it's gonna put like a wonkiness into things. You can do it for a stylistic effect where you just lightly lift your shoulder, and you know, maybe it's going to make you have to draw lighter because your shoulder's just that little bit lifted. But at the same time, it's just a little bit less reliable for you to kind of, like if I'm doing an up and down sweep and then I'm just kind of using my arm to do that, I can do that. But so I would say you can do whatever you want when it comes to stroke, but just try and learn the shoulder tilt. So bring your shoulder forward, or if you're right-handed, you know, bring your shoulder forward. There is the elbow up sort of technique to get at something. This is your shoulder. There's your elbow up technique. There's your elbow relaxed sort of technique. And then there's your sort of elbow in technique. Why am I putting these circles in confusing spots? So elbow in at the side of your ribs, like bump, is your teres minor. Then you've got elbow sort of just normal and relaxed, and you've got your elbow up position. Then you've got your shoulder forward position, which then, you know, allows you to do whichever one that you want. Okay, so those are stroke and how you basically start to learn muscle memory around different things. You know, you learn these different kinds of curves, and in knowing those curves, you can just create your forms better, which is the next stage of drawing, which is where you want to just start creating forms. It won't matter what their measurements are initially, you'll just want to create the forms. Like, I'm creating a circle, and then I'm creating like a box that does this thing, and there'll be like a secondary, there'll be like something that I remove from the box, you know, that gets removed, whatever. So that's removed from the box. And I don't know, maybe we won't even see that part. So yeah, you'll do things with your forms and subforms to get those working. And like with the circles, you know, you might have some sort of concavity that's impacting something. And yeah, so you'll do forms and subforms, whether that be angular, box type stuff, triangles, and other geometry, pyramids, yada yada, circles, all that sort of stuff. You can do still life where you practice like drawing cylinders and fruit, and like I've got like a fruit here, or maybe an egg. An egg has like an interesting curve to it, so that one's cool if you want to practice some swoopy lines or something. Just draw some eggs or something. It's pretty, it's not so bad. I didn't ever really draw still life. Maybe tried it like once or twice, and I was like, oh, what's the point of this? But the point of it would be, if your stroke is good, just developing some ideas around form and perspective, that's good. You want that. And then eventually what you'll do is you'll start to go into measurement. And I'll probably do another one of these, which sort of deep dives into measurement. All right, and so how you can actually measure properly and that sort of thing. All right, take care, everybody. Hope this was informative. Hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, happy learning.